Hey guys, tonight we slip into the polished stillness of a royal courtyard in the Joseon dynasty, where paper rustles like silk and steam curls from tea bowls in the morning light. You're not a warrior or a scholar tonight, you're a court lady, rising quietly before dawn in a stone-floored room that smells faintly of ink, starch, and last night's candle smoke. You rub sleep from your eyes and stretch beneath stiff linen. The letter table awaits. You won't survive a week of this, by the way. Not because it's dangerous, but because you probably can't fold a square into a flower before breakfast while remembering 6 honorific forms and making sure your sleeve doesn't brush the inkstone. Oh, and all this must be done in silence, of course. Breathing too loudly is considered a bit much. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first job this morning is to prepare the mulberry paper. It's made from the inner bark of the dock tree, soft, durable, and slightly translucent when held to the light. You lift the sheet from the drying frame carefully, like it might sigh in protest. It still smells faintly sweet, like boiled sap and bamboo screens. A mainstream historical fact. In 15th century Korea, court ladies were expected to be proficient in jungcheop, the art of letter folding. As part of their daily routine, writing a message was one thing, but folding it with grace, etiquette, and subtle emotional cues, that was the real work. You sit by a low table set near the window. Inkstone, brush, blotter, drying rack. There's a brass water kettle for mixing ink, and beside it, a small cloth pouch containing red sealing cords, tied so precisely they could double as a charm. Your hands are practiced. You pour water slowly into the inkstone, grind the black ink stick with slow, meditative circles. The sound is quiet but gritty, like a distant storm on paper. You test a few brush strokes on a scrap. Still too dry, you add more water. Here's the quirky bit. Some court ladies claimed you could tell someone's mood from the way they ground their ink. Fast circles, anxious. Jagged, loud grinds, possibly angry. One girl supposedly ground hers counterclockwise out of spite. Scandalous. You dip the brush again and begin to write. A short note, just a few lines. It's not for a prince, not today. This is a courtyard letter, meant for another lady across the residence. A thank you for yesterday's tea, folded in a flower shape, with 2 petals slightly open to suggest warmth and receptivity. Historians still argue whether these casual notes held deeper meaning. Some scholars think the whole system was a coded language for court gossip. Others believe it was just a highly decorative way of saying, thanks for the snacks. Once dry, the paper becomes less forgiving. You steam the edges gently over a brass kettle to re-soften them. Your fingers move instinctively now. Fold, pinch, press, align. The letter begins to take form, a 5-petal lotus, delicate and crisp. You starch the corners with rice glue and smooth the center with a bone tool shaped like a turtle shell. Each crease is meaningful. Each angle says something. The top fold curves slightly outward. This is the accepted shape for warmth, but not flirtation. The edges don't overlap, they kiss. You finish with a thread of red silk, looped once, knotted with a twist known only to you and the other folding girls. It's beautiful, understated, quietly alive. You place the letter in a small lacquered box for delivery. No one will see your face, but they'll see the folds, and that's enough. The sun creeps across the floor, catching the fine texture of the mulberry grain. You pour more water into the inkstone. There will be more letters today. The morning softens into a buttery glow as you cross the courtyard stones, your slippered feet silent against the polished path. You're headed to the folding chamber, more a classroom than a workshop, where fresh-eyed attendants in training sit with straight backs and ink-stained fingers. This is where you learned, too. It smells of pressed paper, herbal starch, and the quiet pressure of unspoken rules. Here begins the unbending journey of the folding school. And yes, they really did use paper fans as practice tools. You take your seat beside a low table, where a younger girl glances nervously at her paper. She's working on her petal base, and it's not great. One corner droops like it gave up halfway through being a metaphor. You gently nudge her elbow and straighten the crease. A mainstream historical fact. During the Joseon dynasty, noble girls and court ladies were often trained in letter folding from adolescence, under the guidance of older attendants or special instructors. Folding wasn't just art, it was etiquette, emotion, and protocol, wrapped into a daily act of devotion. But here's the odd detail. Most lessons started not with paper, but with fans. Stiff paper fans, sometimes made of scrap parchment, used to teach the shape and feel of proper creases without wasting precious mulberry sheets. Fan folds taught you balance, symmetry, respect for the invisible centerline. You watch as the girls fold and refold, crease, align, unfold, start again. Their fingers are tentative but improving. You remember the same ache in your thumbs from pressing corners flat with that little seashell-shaped tool your instructor always carried like a weapon. Historians still argue whether this type of training was exclusive to palace ladies or if it extended into upper-class households. Some scrolls suggest it became a trend among noblewomen to send courtyard letters even outside the royal walls. Others think the palace just made it look fashionable, like a particularly quiet influencer. A girl nearby sighs dramatically as her fifth attempt collapses into something that looks more like a crumpled radish than a petal. You pass her a new square of paper and a small joking wink. Strict silence or not, you're allowed a little kindness. Folding school is serious business, but everyone knows the paper is more forgiving than the instructors. You take your own practice sheet and begin a simple exercise, 4 folds to create a frame. It's a warm-up, a reminder that your hands still remember. Fold in, crease, open. Fold up, crease, breathe. It's like origami meets ritual prayer, repetitive, sacred, and never really finished. There's something peaceful about the room. No one speaks, yet the place hums with quiet concentration. Scrolls line the wall showing approved folds, lotus, plum, butterfly, and the rare pine twist reserved for seasonal announcements. You once got in trouble for trying a new variation that resembled a cat's ear. It was declared irreverent. You called it creative. You lost that argument. A bell chimes from across the courtyard. Time for rotation. The folding school disperses, girls rising with small bows and careful stacking of their failed masterpieces. You gather your materials, brush away a stray thread of paper, and step into the sunlight. Your fingers twitch. You're tempted to fold a message into a cherry blossom and tuck it into someone's slipper. You don't, but you smile at the thought. You've trained your hands well. They remember not just the technique, but the intention. And that's what folding is, really. Gesture made visible. You find yourself back in your own quiet chamber now, a place tucked beneath the eaves of the eastern pavilion where the windows are latticed and the light falls in soft diamonds across the floor. You roll out your mat, smooth the creases of your robe, and lay a blank sheet of creamy hanji in front of you. Today's assignment is ceremonial. Not just any fold will do. You're preparing a 5-petal fold, reserved for courtly grace, soft thanks, and sometimes for the gentlest hints of affection. The paper is smooth beneath your fingers, just the right weight. You test its flexibility with a diagonal crease, then open it carefully. You mark 4 faint guidelines using a bit of powdered charcoal on your finger, barely visible, but just enough to keep your angles honest. A mainstream historical fact: the 5-petal fold, sometimes called the lotus fold, or Eosok Gwae in later records, was one of the most common yet symbolically rich folding styles used by women at the Korean royal court. It mimicked the symmetry of a blooming flower and was used to communicate modest affection, thanks, and ceremonial well wishes. Your fingers move in sequence. First corner in, second corner meets it. Fold the lower edge into a soft point, then crease both sides into wings, petals really. When finished, the result looks like a layered blossom, its center a small flat square where a single character or name might be brushed in gold or ink. Now for the detail no one outside the court was supposed to know. The number of strokes you used to flatten each fold mattered. An odd number meant formality. An even number suggested intimacy. You've watched some of the bolder girls press their folds 3 times for princes they claimed they didn't like, sure. You start again with a fresh sheet, this time moving more slowly. Your mind drifts. To the lady who once folded a letter into a 5-petal shape with one side slightly askew, the tip bent like a broken wing, everyone whispered that it meant a flower offered too late. Whether it worked, who knows? The prince kept it. Historians still argue whether these meanings were formalized or purely invented by the court ladies themselves. Some letters survive with matching folds and similar notes, suggesting a shared symbolic language. Others show inconsistencies, where a butterfly fold meant love one week and betrayal the next. Perhaps it was more feeling than formula. You press your fold carefully and turn the finished letter in your palm. It's light, balanced. You test how it opens, how it sits when placed in a sleeve, how the petals unfurl without tearing. All that matters. It's not just the shape, it's the experience. A letter should bloom, not collapse. You place it beside 2 others, each a slightly different flower. You're building a bouquet in paper, one for thanks, one for condolence, one just because. You don't always know who'll receive them. Sometimes you fold for the archives, for ritual. Sometimes the name is whispered to you at the last moment. Then you fold fast and fold well. The sun has crept further along the paper mat. A breeze stirs the corners of your folds and lifts the edge of the hem on your robe. You weigh the letters with a polished stone until you can deliver them. There's no ink smudge on your fingers, no warped edge, no uneven tip. You've made 3 perfect flowers, each a silent expression, each ready to speak on your behalf. And now you rest your hands in your lap and exhale slowly. This is the kind of folding that doesn't rush. It unfolds in its own time. Evening seeps gently into the palace grounds now, casting long shadows beneath the hanging lanterns and cooling the polished tiles under your bare feet. You walk slowly back to your chamber, a folded letter tucked discreetly in your sleeve. This one's different. It's not for a courtly ceremony or an official reply. It's private, quiet, dangerous even. Because tonight you'll be folding one of the palace's most whispered creations, the secret fold. You light a single oil lamp, its flickering glow just enough to cast shadows across your mat. Then you pull out the thin paper, a soft rice-based hanji, much more pliable than usual. It's a dull cream, easily overlooked. No pattern, no scent. Nothing that would suggest that what you're folding contains a message meant only for one set of eyes. A mainstream historical fact. Throughout the Joseon dynasty, palace communication was strictly controlled, particularly for women. Ladies-in-waiting were rarely allowed personal correspondence. Yet folded notes continued to pass quietly, often without words, hidden in food trays, sewing baskets, or hems of garments. Folding style became its own kind of encryption. You set the paper down and press the first fold without a guide. This one doesn't follow the ceremonial shapes. There are no petals, no butterflies. The corners turn inward sharply, making the paper look like a closed bud or a wrapped seed. If you do it right, it unfolds out of order, creating a delay that gives the receiver time to memorize or destroy the contents before anyone else sees. Here's the quirky part. Some folds were designed to fall apart completely after 2 or 3 openings. Ladies would starch one corner to create a memory crease, so it would only open properly once. Others tucked threads between layers, pull the wrong one, and the letter tore in half. Not exactly espionage, but elegant sabotage nonetheless. Historians still argue whether these folds originated from noblewomen or were taught to court ladies by older palace maids who knew every back hallway and shortcut between quarters. The truth? Probably both. Women are resourceful, and the walls of a palace are never quite solid when you fold around them. You write no words on this one, just a single brushstroke in red ink, meant only to be seen under firelight. The stroke curves like a hill, it's part symbol, part sigh. You pinch the final corner shut and hold the letter up to the light. The shadow of the folds crisscrosses delicately. You slip it into a handkerchief pocket, tie it shut with a thin ribbon, and place it beneath your sleeve. The breeze returns, cool now, with a hint of pine from the temple courtyard. You blow out the lamp and step out into the quiet corridors. No one is watching. Or if they are, they say nothing. As you pass the laundry hall, a girl with flour on her sleeve slips a tray of sweets into your hands. She doesn't meet your eyes. You nod once, turn, and disappear into the dark. You'll place the letter beneath a robe in the prince's quarters, among the laundry, or maybe in the hollow of the bamboo flute left by the musician's gate. You'll know when you get there. Your folds are quiet, but they speak louder than drums. And tonight, one of them may change everything. You rise before the bells the next morning, your robe still creased from sleep, though your mind is already folding. The air carries the crispness of early tea steam and wet garden moss, and somewhere nearby a court rooster does its best to sound dignified. You ignore it. Today's task isn't about messengers or meanings. It's about precision and perfume. You'll be crafting one of the more delicate and surprisingly technical palace creations. A scented corner fold, structured with plant starch creases. You sit by your table, where 5 blank sheets lie waiting. Today's paper is slightly heavier than usual, treated with a fine mist of diluted rice starch. You run your fingers across the sheet and feel its subtle tension. This isn't just for stability, it's for fold memory. A mainstream historical fact. Korean court ladies often treated their folding paper with homemade starch solutions to help maintain crisp lines and structured shapes, especially in humid seasons. These folds held better, unfurled more slowly, and could even be designed to spring open in a certain direction. You prepare your materials, a tray of starch water, a clean brush, and a stack of dried petals, rose, chrysanthemum, plum. The petals aren't decorations, they're the scent source. You'll tuck them inside the final fold so that, upon opening, the recipient gets the faintest breath of something floral. A hidden message and a perfume, that's elegance. And now the quirky twist. Scented letters had their own folding etiquette. Rose meant affection, but not romantic love. Plum blossom hinted at resilience. And if someone folded a letter with no scent at all, just dry paper and silence, that was shade. You brush a corner with starch and press your first fold. The paper resists slightly, then submits. You add a tiny sachet, 2 crushed chrysanthemum petals tied in silk thread, and hide it beneath the final crease. Historians still argue whether scented letters were part of formal etiquette or whispered communication. Some believe they were traced back to Goryeo-era incense rituals, while others think it was simply a habit born from keeping letters in perfumed sleeves. You finish your second fold, this time tucking in a sliver of sandalwood-scented bark. More somber, perhaps to accompany condolences or a message about someone's health. Not everything folded in this palace is sweet. Some of it stings softly. A breeze floats in through the screen window, lifting the edges of your drying folds. You place stones on the corners to weigh them down and take a moment to stretch your fingers. A tiny crack echoes in your knuckle, proof that you've been folding with more care than rest. A colleague arrives bearing tea and a note, folded, of course, in a triangle blossom. You open it carefully. It smells like pear. She's invited you to sit in the plum garden later. Nothing urgent, but the fold is tidy and the scent is fresh. It's a nice gesture. You make a mental note to fold a reply before the third bell. You set to your final fold for the morning. This one's for a message of encouragement, meant for a younger girl struggling with calligraphy. You tuck in a single hyacinth petal and a piece of cinnamon bark, sweet, sharp, and enduring. Each fold is pressed carefully with your bone tool. Each crease is reinforced with a touch of starch, and every finished letter holds a quiet, invisible voice. You lay them out to dry, then close your eyes and inhale. The room smells like a secret garden made entirely of paper. You've left no words today, only scents, creases, and care. But here in the royal court, sometimes that's more than enough. The sun is high now, casting long, lacy shadows through the screen doors of the western veranda. You move quietly through the stone corridors, hands tucked in your sleeves, carrying today's most elaborate task folded gently against your chest. You've been asked to prepare a message in one of the court's most intricate and frankly dramatic styles, the butterfly fold, adorned with internal chrysanthemum codes. You take your seat at the central folding table, a larger workspace reserved for complex folds and formal rituals. The paper for this task is thinner, dyed a pale lavender at the edges and subtly marbled with rice soot. It shimmers when the light catches it like moth wings. A mainstream historical fact. During the Joseon dynasty, the folding techniques of court ladies evolved into a highly symbolic language. The butterfly fold, shaped with curved tips and layered panels, was often used for poetry, invitations, or emotional confessions, usually between women. It wasn't necessarily romantic, but it always meant this means something. You begin with a square base, making 2 diagonal folds, then rotating the sheet to create 6 layered pleats at the center. The tips curl upward to form antennae. The shape flutters slightly on the table as if alive. Inside this structure, you'll hide a smaller coded message in the form of a chrysanthemum grid, a folding pattern that reveals certain lines of the letter only when specific creases are pulled in order. You write 4 short lines in a diamond, one about time, one about distance, one about dreams, and one ambiguous and unsentimental about wind. It will be up to the recipient to know which corner to pull first. Here's the quirky detail. Some court ladies composed letters entirely in fake chrysanthemum codes, folds that appeared significant but revealed nothing, a playful trick to confuse nosy readers. Others would intentionally crease poems upside down, so only those who rotated the paper properly could read the intended verse. Historians still argue whether these folds were meant to protect actual secrets or were more like games, coded intimacy between bored geniuses and embroidered slippers. Some scholars suggest the butterfly shape was also a nod to metamorphosis, a soft rebellion against their static, gilded lives. You complete the fold by curling the top edges gently outward, forming delicate wings. A silk thread is wrapped around the middle, not too tight. A tight knot might suggest closure. Looser threads suggest openness, curiosity, maybe uncertainty. You hold the completed piece in your palm. It trembles faintly in the breeze. To an outsider, this might look like a folded poem or a clever invitation to tea, but you know better. The fold speaks without saying. It means something like, "I'm listening," or "I remember," or "I can't say more, but this is enough." You place it carefully into a lacquered box, nestled beside a camellia blossom. You write no name. You don't need to. As you gather your tools, your eyes drift to the scroll hanging above the door. It bears a simple phrase, "Words folded are thoughts preserved." You smile. The butterfly rests on the table. And for a moment, you think maybe paper really can fly. The afternoon hums softly outside the paper screens. Cicadas starting their slow rhythm, servants brushing leaves from courtyard paths. the distant clack of a laundry press echoing from somewhere near the kitchens. You remain inside, seated cross-legged beside a low tray, your hands hovering over a delicate skein of embroidered silk thread. Today's task is not the fold itself, it's the finish. You're preparing one of the most subtle and symbolic closures in the palace letter folding tradition, the silk thread tie. It's not as simple as it looks. First, the thread. It must be long enough to wrap twice around the finished fold, but not so long that it dangles like a careless sash. Too tight and the paper warps. Too loose and the message feels insincere. The court expects you to know the exact tension, taught to you by feel, not by ruler. A mainstream historical fact. Court letters in the Joseon dynasty were often tied closed with dyed silk threads, both to keep the paper in place and to convey meaning. The color, thickness, knot placement, and even the direction of the tie could all signify the sender's intent or social status. You unspool the silk, light blue today, the color of calm intentions, and fold it into a loose figure 8 before wrapping it around your finished 5-petal message. You let your fingers work slowly. The first loop crisscrosses gently at the back. The second rests lightly over the center. Then comes the knot. Now, the quirky part. Some palace knots were deliberately designed to be confusing. Hidden loops, decoy knots, or sliding closures that could only be undone if you pulled in the correct sequence. A lady-in-waiting once created a tie that resembled a dragon's tail. Her recipient took so long to untie it that he fell asleep before reading the letter. She was quietly thrilled. Historians still debate whether these ties were purely aesthetic or part of a layered security system within the palace. Some believe court ladies used them to protect sensitive messages. Others think it was simply a chance to show off a little silent elegance, looped in silk. You tie today's knot in the susul style, a soft heart-like loop nestled between the petals. You tug it once to check the hold. Perfect. Then you press a small wax seal at the base, not a symbol of rank, just your personal mark, a subtle wave shape brushed in crimson with a thread of gold. Your fingers ache slightly. This letter isn't especially long, but it carries weight. It's a private reply to a grieving dowager, sent with no words of comfort, just the folded shape, the silk tie, and a single pressed violet hidden beneath the flap. You press the folds one last time, smoothing the crease, and breathe over the wax to shine it, a soft huff like a sigh. And now the letter is ready. Not to be opened, not to be read, but to be felt, touched, turned over slowly in the quiet of another's hands. You place it in a thin box, tie the box with black thread, respectful, appropriate, and hand it to the messenger with both palms up. He bows. He won't ask questions. You won't answer any. The room feels quieter once he leaves. You sweep your work table, catching stray threads and a scrap of paper the size of your fingernail. You hesitate, then fold it into a perfect triangle, even though it will go nowhere. It's a reflex now, folding, tying, breathing. You live by corners and symmetry. The sun filters low through the screens now. You roll your shoulders. Your thread box is nearly empty. But your hands are full of skill. The evening heat has begun to settle like a soft, heavy cloth across the tiled roofs of the palace. You can hear the faint clop of hooves echoing along the south corridor. Another messenger arriving, probably late, probably flustered. But you don't rush. You're seated just outside the letter dispatch chamber, legs tucked beneath you, scroll in hand, because today your role isn't just to fold. Today you're tracking the quiet chaos of palace messengers and how folding slowed everything down. It's not as straightforward as you might think. You see, some letters, especially the ornate ceremonial ones, took longer to deliver not because of distance or urgency, but because of the fold complexity. Yes, really. The more intricate the design, the more time it took for the messenger to protect it, interpret it, and sometimes wait for it to unfold itself. A mainstream historical fact. Messages in the royal court were often delivered by foot messengers, known as daeshiop-1, who specialized in transporting sensitive, confidential, or highly symbolic folded letters. These officials memorized sender details, folding types, and opening instructions, sometimes more than the messages themselves. A new courier arrives now, panting slightly, scroll tucked under his sash. You accept it with a bow and unroll it with practiced fingers. It's a double-winged fold, 2 layers of paper interlocked with staggered seals. Beautiful, maddening. You know it will take at least 2 minutes to open, longer if it's been tied tightly. You log it, set it aside, and motion for a tea tray. Here's the quirky part. Messengers weren't just delivery boys, they were trained in letter posture. The way they carried the fold mattered. Tilted left meant it was already read. Right meant unopened. Upright and flat in both hands, urgent, sacred, or possibly royal reprimand. You've seen girls faint just from the way a letter was carried across the courtyard. Historians still argue whether these delivery rituals were created for practicality or for theater. After all, the palace was equal parts drama and administration. Some records suggest it was the messengers themselves who invented the posture rules to avoid being blamed for wrinkled folds. You sort today's deliveries on a lacquered tray, petal folds here, scrolls there, butterfly styles stacked loosely to avoid warping. Each one is tagged with a bamboo slip indicating sender, recipient, and, crucially, the fold category. Some days you receive up to 30 letters, on feast days fewer. Everyone's too busy posing, but today is mid-month. The poems are flowing, the gossip is thick, and everyone's folding. You open a triangular lotus fold sent from the kitchen quarters. It's slightly crushed. You frown. Someone mishandled it. You set it aside and make a quiet note to retrain that courier. And this next one, oh, it's a triple tuck fold, dyed pale pink and tied with gold thread. Fancy, needlessly so. You roll your eyes affectionately and place it gently in a covered tray marked romantic nonsense. It'll go out in the second round after the administrative letters, but before the polite refusals. By sunset, you've received, reviewed, and routed nearly 20 messages. Your log is neat, your fingers stain slightly with rose ink, and your shoulders ache in that familiar way, half proud, half bent from years of holding still. You roll up your delivery scroll and bow to the day's final messenger as he takes the pouch of outbound notes. You don't need to say anything. The folds say it all. As he vanishes into the twilight, you remain seated for a moment longer, watching the shadows pool between the flagstones. The letters are gone now, fluttering toward their readers like paper birds, and all because you folded them carefully and sent them just so. You stretch your hands, flex your fingers, and smile. The palace may run on rules, but it walks on paper. Night has fully fallen now, cloaking the palace in a hush so deep you can hear the moths fluttering near the lanterns and the rustle of silk robes moving somewhere in the distance. You're back in your quarters with a stack of rejected folds in your lap. Slightly warped, crooked, one even sealed upside down, today's task is one of quiet accountability. Tonight, you reflect on what no one talks about in the glamorous whisper world of royal correspondence: how not to fold a letter. It begins, as all mistakes do, with overconfidence. You pick up a ruined chrysanthemum fold. The center is puckered, the layers uneven. Someone pressed too hard on one side, which caused the entire shape to lean like a drunken teacup. You smirk. A beginner's error, one you've made yourself, on your third month, trying to impress a poetry teacher who only folded rectangles and didn't believe in curves. A mainstream historical fact. The court treated folding not just as decoration, but as an extension of moral character. A poorly folded letter could be seen as careless, immature, or even disrespectful, especially if sent to someone of higher rank. Certain angles and edges were meant to mirror Confucian ideals of balance, harmony, and restraint. Now here's the quirky part. Fold failures were documented. There was an entire scroll in the records office dedicated to folding mishaps. Most were minor: uneven corners, frayed thread, ink smudges from overenthusiastic sealing. But a few were legendary. One girl accidentally folded her letter in the wrong direction, making it resemble a mourning envelope, and sent it to the queen. She was reassigned to the candle trimming wing for 6 months. You pick up a two-starched butterfly fold. The paper crackles unpleasantly, and when you try to open it, it tears along a seam, over-starching. Common mistake in the summer months. You set it aside and mark the margin, rescuable with steam. Historians still argue whether folding errors were truly punished or just politely mocked. Some accounts suggest formal reprimands. Others point to passive-aggressive notes attached to returned letters. Things like "your fold was unexpected" or an ambitious interpretation. You sip barley tea and pick up a petal fold that simply refuses to lay flat. It puffs open like an overboiled dumpling. You laugh. This one's beyond saving. But you don't throw these letters away. That's not how it's done. You set them aside for the burn basket. A small wicker container with ash lining, placed near the window. At the end of the week, the oldest folds will be burned, quietly, reverently. Not because they were bad, but because they were part of learning. The basket smells faintly of old ink and dried glue. You add a final one, a letter with a knot so tangled it might take an hour to undo. You pause. There's a certain chaotic charm to it. You tuck it into your robe pocket instead. Maybe you'll study it later, or use it as a decoy. The room is still now. The pile of flawed folds sits beside you, no longer shameful, just evidence of a life lived in paper. You press your palms together, bow slightly toward the burn basket, and blow out the smallest lantern. Tomorrow, you'll fold better. But tonight, you've honored the mistakes. The early dawn is a hush broken only by the faint crackle of charcoal being lit across the palace kitchens. You step barefoot into the northern chamber of the residence hall, carrying a bundle of last week's letters wrapped in a faded brocade cloth. Your destination lies just ahead, behind a carved wooden screen painted with cranes and bamboo. A quiet alcove with a stone basin and a lidded brass urn. This is where they go. The failures, the private, the unreplied. Today you are tending to the most solemn ritual in the world of royal folding, the burn basket. The alcove smells faintly of paper ash, herbal glue, and the lingering sweetness of past messages. A folded scrap flutters slightly as you kneel beside the urn, carefully untying your bundle. Inside are 12 letters, some unopened. Some read and returned without a fold changed. Others, creased and softened by handling, were simply not answered. A mainstream historical fact: the royal court had a formal system for disposing of unused or unwanted letters. Messages of failed intent, damaged folds, or even perfectly crafted ones that were no longer relevant were not simply thrown away. They were ritually burned, usually once a week by a select group of ladies. You light a thin stick of pine incense and breathe slowly as the flame steadies. The first letter you burn is folded into a triple-petal loop, a thank you that came back without a seal. You pause for a moment, then slide it gently into the brass urn. It catches slowly. The flame flickers blue at the edges. Now the quirky bit. Some palace women secretly rescued these letters. Before the ritual began, they'd hide a fold or two, usually ones that contained an especially clever verse or an ink flourish too beautiful to lose. These ghost letters were stored in hidden boxes beneath floorboards or behind decorative screens, passed from girl to girl like tiny paper-bound memories. You've saved a few too. There's one in your sleeve right now, a letter with no name, no message, just a petal fold wrapped in golden thread. It was found under a lantern base last spring. No one claimed it. You've kept it safe ever since. Historians still debate whether the burn basket was truly sacred or just an administrative necessity. Some records frame it as a moral cleansing, destroying failed communication to maintain harmony. Others suggest it was about space. Letters accumulated, after all, and courtyards don't store paper forever. You burn the next 3 letters more quickly, each one curling inward like sleeping birds. One of them has a tiny pressed leaf tucked inside. You remove it first and place it gently in your lap. A junior lady enters quietly and bows. She carries her own bundle, wrapped in gray silk. Together, you burn the last of the day's offerings in silence. The ash swirls lazily, lifting into the air like smoke from a story that can't be retold. You seal the urn, clean the basin, and fan the embers with a folded fan. The fan itself is made of old court paper, creased in dozens of styles now faded into soft curves. You wonder what those letters once said. You bow one last time and rise, carefully gathering the unused scraps from your tray. You tuck the rescued leaf into a scroll, and you carry your ghost letter back to your chamber. In a palace filled with words, sometimes the quietest ones matter most. And though they're gone now, burned, dissolved into air, those folded thoughts still drift behind your eyes as you walk back toward the light. Later that day, you're summoned to the jade-tiled courtyard of the etiquette hall. It's not punishment, at least not yet. It's review. Once a month, the court latest folds are evaluated not for grammar, but for formality, emotion, and rank correctness. You smooth your robe, gather your recent works, and brace yourself for the most quietly stressful event in a folder's life: court etiquette and fold hierarchies. You arrive to find rows of lacquered boxes arranged on mats, each filled with folded letters waiting to be judged. There's no scoreboard, no announcer, just 4 matrons with the eyes of hawks and the opinions of librarians during a heat wave. They nod politely. You bow so low your forehead almost kisses the paper. A mainstream historical fact: in the structured society of the Joseon court, written communication followed strict hierarchies. Folds were not one-size-fits-all. Each level of nobility, each role, concubine, princess, stewardess, had an assigned letter form. Deviating from that could be seen as insolent or deeply romantic, depending on how attractive the recipient was. You present your first offering, a standard 5-petal message folded for a senior attendant. It has the appropriate firmness, subtle curve at the base, and silk closure in neutral green, non-flirtatious, non-mourning. The head matron nods approval. You exhale silently. Next up, a butterfly fold sent to a fellow court lady for her name day. This one's trickier. Too ornate for her rank and you might be accused of flattery. Too plain and she might think you disapprove of her singing. Court friendships are a minefield creased at 45 degrees. And here's the quirky twist. The angle of the tip, the very top point of a triangular fold, was sometimes read like a raised eyebrow. A sharp upward point meant eagerness. A downward slope, disdain. One unlucky scribe once folded a royal announcement with a dip so deep it looked like a pout. The Queen Mother thought she was being mocked. It took weeks to smooth that one out, politically and literally. Historians still argue whether these fold readings were formal doctrine or just gossip grown into gospel. Some suggest there were printed diagrams distributed within the court. Others insist it was all whispers, taught in corridors between tea duties. You watch as a matron carefully unfolds a letter and examines the sequence. Did it open too quickly? Was the center too tight? Did the corners align with the base or wander like a drunk poet's thoughts? You pass, not spectacularly, not poorly, just properly. You return to your place, noting whose letters are being praised and whose are being frowned over. A girl beside you is getting scolded for folding above her status, a poetic bloom with a silver thread closure. It was lovely. It was also sent to a minor clerk. Too much drama, not enough bureaucracy. You admire her courage silently. Your final fold is more humble. A sympathy message for a kitchen maid who lost her aunt. It's in a subdued plum tone, triangular with a looped thread tucked discreetly inside. The matron's fingers pause for a long time over the closure, then she nods just once. You bow and collect your folds, placing them in a silk pouch with careful hands. Nothing was torn, nothing dishonored. You live to fold another day. As you leave the courtyard, you pass a servant delivering new paper to the younger girls. It's soft peach, threaded with gold fibers. You remember when you first folded that kind. You thought it meant your letters would shine. Now you know, it's not the paper, it's the pressure. And still, you fold. A pale drizzle begins to sweep through the palace gardens as you make your way back to the folding room. The rain falls softly, more mist than storm. But already you can hear the shuffle of attendants hurrying to bring in silks, to cover scrolls, to shut the windows that let in both wind and gossip. For you, the weather changes everything. Because now, the paper changes. The humidity shifts the rules, and with it comes the need for a special art form, rain letters and weather folds. You roll open the case of climate-treated paper. It's thicker, slightly waxy to the touch. Not slick, but resilient. Unlike regular hanji, this paper won't warp at the first sigh of moisture. It has been stored with dried seaweed and mulberry bark to absorb and resist, like a polite court lady who pretends she didn't hear your insult. A mainstream historical fact. In wet seasons or during monsoon months, scribes and letter folders in the Joseon court used specially prepared paper for correspondence. It wasn't waterproof, but it held creases better, dried more predictably, and most importantly, kept its scent when folded with herbal oils or perfumes. You fold a simple triangle first, just to test. It holds, barely. You adjust the angle, pressing with a bone tool heated slightly over a candle. That helps. You'll need to adapt every technique today, longer drying time, shorter creases, shallower folds to prevent puckering. Folding in the rain is like dancing in mud, graceful but riskier. And now the quirky detail. On rainy days, certain folds were considered unlucky. The butterfly, for instance, was avoided during downpours, as it was said to signal fragile intentions. Instead, letters were folded into tighter, grounded shapes: mountains, bridges, knots, forms that wouldn't flutter away emotionally or physically. Historians still argue whether these associations were deeply rooted or just poetic superstition. Some folding guides mention weather-appropriate etiquette. Others dismiss it as seasonal fussiness. But you've seen the way faces fall when the wrong fold arrives in the wrong weather. You prepare a rain letter now, just a short note to a sick stewardess wrapped in a cloud fold design. You line the inner crease with beeswax to repel the damp, then seal the tip with a melted pearl of soapstone wax. It won't last long, but it only needs to survive the short walk across the courtyard. Another letter is more ambitious. A bridge fold meant to deliver a poem across garden ground slick with rain. You tuck the ends inward, fold the middle like a ripple, and test its bounce. It springs slightly, but not too much, balanced, quietly confident. A delivery girl in reed sandals enters, bowing quickly. She smells like pine and wet air. You hand her the wax-sealed letter in a lacquer pouch, nodding to the gray sky beyond the paper doors. She hesitates, then smiles faintly and says, "A fold that endures." It's a common saying among letter carriers. Half encouragement, half inside joke. You return to your desk and blot your tools. The parchment is sticking to itself now. Time to pause. You rest your hands on your knees and listen to the rain tapping against the clay roof tiles above. Outside, umbrellas bloom like flowers made of oilcloth. Letters are delivered in sleeves, in baskets, in folded sleeves within folded sleeves. And somewhere, someone unfolds your message in a dry corner of the palace. It doesn't fall apart. It opens like a hush. The rain has passed by the time the first stars appear, flickering above the tiled roofs like distant candle flames. A cool wind moves through the corridors now, stirring the lanterns and whispering through the paper screens. You are seated on your mat again, a low oil lamp casting soft amber light across your lap. Tonight there's no delivery, no assignment, no judgment. Tonight you unfold and reread, a quiet ritual practiced by countless palace women before you. These are the moonlight reading rituals. You open the lacquered box beside your bedding and lift out a bundle of letters tied together with plum-colored thread. These aren't court records or duty messages. These are yours, old notes, some you wrote, others you received, all of them carefully refolded, stored away like pressed petals. A mainstream historical fact. It was common for Joseon-era court ladies to keep personal collections of letters, especially folded ones they admired, or that carried emotional weight. These bundles, known as SSEURIP, were often reread by lamplight during quiet hours, offering a kind of private companionship in an otherwise silent life. You pick one, an old petal fold, a bit crinkled at the tips. You unfold it slowly with the reverence of someone opening a memory. The handwriting is neat but rushed, the message short. Just a line about tea that arrived too late and a plum blossom that bloomed too early. It makes you smile. And here's the quirky part. Many ladies in waiting developed distinct unfolding styles. Some used a slow diagonal peel, others a circular unravel like a scroll. The belief was that how you opened a letter determined what you took from it. It was a kind of emotional choreography, like choosing the right tempo for a song. Historians still argue whether this was practiced widely or only among poetic types. One 17th-century scroll mentions a ghost letter club, where girls refolded each other's notes weekly and passed them around with new folds and secret marks. It's unclear if this was a game, a ritual, or something gentler, a way to say, I saw your words, I kept them alive. You continue reading. A butterfly fold you once admired for its structure now feels stiff. A pine crease message you barely noticed before now strikes you as surprisingly wise. Funny how a letter doesn't change, but you do. You unfold one with a pressed leaf tucked inside. It's faded now, the green gone to brown, the stem delicate as thread. The message was about the first frost. You remember the girl who gave it to you. She left the court a year ago. You wonder if she still folds. Outside, the wind hushes the last cicadas. You light another lamp and sit cross-legged. The letters fanned around you like fallen stars. You're not reading for meaning, not anymore. You're just watching how the paper unfolds, remembering the hands that once held these folds, the breath that once sealed them shut. You refold each letter slowly, using new creases. Nothing dramatic, just enough to give them a second life. The last letter is blank, never written. You keep it anyway, an empty fold with infinite potential. You tuck the bundle back into its box, wrap it with care, and extinguish the lamp. Not every fold has to go somewhere. Some simply stay. A bell rings from the outer hall, not the sharp one for meals or prayer, but a softer chime. A signal. You rise quickly, slip on your outer robe, and make your way to the northern courtyard, where the stone floor has been swept clear, and a small table set with judging scrolls and a lacquered gong. Tonight it's not about etiquette or status. Tonight the palace hosts something far rarer and more quietly anticipated, a letter folding competition. Yes, it's real. And yes, the stakes are entirely symbolic, but that doesn't mean people don't take it very seriously. A mainstream historical fact. While not formalized as public tournaments, letter folding competitions did exist informally within the court, especially during seasonal festivals or slow weeks when diplomatic envoys or important guests had yet to arrive. Attendants would compete for honor, a silk ribbon, or the right to deliver the first letter of the new month. You take your place among a group of 7 court ladies. Each has her own folding tools, ink brush, scented starch, her lucky paperweight. You carry only your bone folder and a pouch of plum-colored thread. The paper provided tonight is thin, slick, and dyed in shades of early autumn, ochre, pale green, and soft charcoal. Challenging to crease, easy to wrinkle. Tonight's challenge is announced. Fold a message that conveys longing without words. You bow, breathe, and begin. The room is silent except for the sounds of shifting paper and quiet exhalations. You fold instinctively, a long diagonal first, then a soft triangular tuck. You flare the corners into open petals, then close them again slightly, like a gesture reaching out but not quite touching. You use no thread, just pressure. The fold must hold itself. A quirky detail. Some ladies believed that folding in competitions had a curse. If you won too many times, your messages would stop being answered. Something about appearing too clever, too practiced. So, some competitors deliberately lost, folding imperfectly to protect their real messages. Historians still argue whether the outcomes of these competitions were rigged. Judges often favored certain shapes. Some years it was all about tight spirals, other times it was soft drapes and wide flares. Political alliances could influence results too. A perfect fold might lose if sent to the wrong recipient. You place your finished letter on the tray. It sits modestly, a curved mountain shape with 2 flared sides and a tucked-in base. Not dramatic, but honest. It holds. The judges walk slowly, hands folded behind their backs. They murmur softly as they observe. One raises an eyebrow at a butterfly fold that collapsed slightly at one wing. Another lingers over a braided closure sealed with a pearl bead. Too ornate, perhaps. They reach yours. No nod, no frown, just a long pause. They move on. In the end, the prize goes to a girl from the southeast chamber. Her fold is shaped like an open fan, brushed faintly with cedar oil. Beautiful. You clap politely with the others. She bows so low you can see the ribbon coming loose from her hair. Afterward, you exchange glances with a friend across the mat. She mouths the words, "You should have won." You mouth back, "Maybe next time." You walk back slowly with your folded letter still in your hands. It wasn't chosen, but you still admire its weight, its shape, the way the layers rest against each other like sighs. You place it inside your robe and carry it home. Sometimes the best folds aren't judged. They're just kept. The moon has risen high and white above the tiled eaves, its reflection caught faintly in the still basin outside your window. The palace has quieted, as it always does this time of night. Soft footsteps, hushed voices, shutters slowly drawn closed. You sit at your table, alone, the lamplight low and golden. This is your favorite time of day when the world stops watching. Tonight, you prepare the last fold before sleep. You begin with one final sheet of paper, plain hanji, soft from age, trimmed just slightly smaller than regulation size. It's not meant for delivery, not even for rereading. This fold is personal, ritual, something like a lullaby made out of angles and symmetry. You dip your fingers in warm water, flex the joints of your knuckles, and press the first fold slowly, diagonal, gentle, silent. A mainstream historical fact: court ladies, after completing their daily tasks, often ended the night with a final, untasked fold, a habit practiced not out of duty but comfort. These pillow folds, as some later called them, were said to calm the hands and quiet the mind, easing one into sleep. Tonight's fold is a simple one, a plum petal base with a floating curve and a tucked inner edge. It won't be sealed, it won't be scented. You just want it to sit quietly, like the way your breath has begun to soften. Here's the quiet twist, perhaps the softest one of all. Some women whispered small unspoken hopes into their night folds, not written, not recorded, just breathed, a name, a memory, a wish to dream of something kinder than what the day held. Historians still argue whether these folds were mere habit or miniature prayers. Some scrolls describe women folding while facing the moon, others mention no-fold nights, when sorrow made hands too heavy to crease even a square. You fold the final petal and smooth the tip with the heel of your palm. It's not symmetrical. You leave it that way. The imperfection makes it feel more alive, like something that won't mind being forgotten on the edge of your bedding. You set it beside your pillow. Tomorrow you may unfold it and fold it again, or you may not. You lie back, eyes half closed, the scent of old ink and soft starch still clinging faintly to your sleeves. The room is quiet now. And so we slow everything down. Let your breath soften like old paper, settling into its folds. Let your hands grow still, your shoulders drop, your eyes sink like coins into warm water. Outside, the palace dreams in stillness. Letters wait unread, messages pause mid-fold. You have done enough for one day. Tonight, nothing is required of you. No corners to match, no meanings to shape, no symbols to hide. Just stillness. Just sleep. Let your thoughts flutter once. Then fold into silence.